My sister secretly set up a hidden camera during my wedding night. I never imagined I would have to write about something this unsettling, especially when it concerns the very people I grew up with and trusted all my life. My name is Elena, I'm 28 years old, and I recently got married to a wonderful man named Andrew. We'd been together for over 2 years before our wedding, and from the moment we met, I felt an almost instantaneous connection, one that spoke to honesty, affection, and the promise of a supportive partnership. Yet never, in my worst nightmares, did I think our joyful day could be overshadowed by the deception of someone so close to me, my own sister, Victoria. What I discovered on my wedding night and the disturbing events that followed still feel like a surreal nightmare. I'm sharing this because I need to get it off my chest, and perhaps it'll serve as a warning to anyone who notices odd behavior from someone they think they know. From the outside, my sister and I always appeared reasonably friendly, even though we had a long history of competition and misunderstandings. Growing up, we were just 2 years apart. Our parents were successful, traditional in some ways, and they put a lot of pressure on us. On me, to be the polite, responsible older daughter, and on her, to shine in her own right but never to cause trouble. As kids, Victoria, or Vika as we called her, and I would fight over silly things. Who got the bigger piece of cake? Who got to control the TV remote? Who did better in school? But it was never truly malicious back then. We'd scream, cry, then make up by the next day. As we got older, though, that rivalry began to morph into something more complicated. In high school, she would compare our grades, or the number of friends each of us had. I tried to ignore it, but it kept getting worse. We drifted apart, each building our own social circles. By the time we were both in our 20s, we were like distant acquaintances who happened to share parents. She moved to a nearby city for work, and I stayed in our hometown. We'd meet for holidays or birthdays, but there was always a subtle tension whenever we were in the same room. Little jabs, sarcastic remarks, or pointed questions about each other's lives had become the norm. Despite this, I secretly hoped that one day we'd repair our relationship for the sake of our parents and for the memory of our childhood bond. That hope only grew stronger when I started dating Andrew. I met Andrew at a friend's engagement party. He was polite, kind, and unlike most men I'd dated, seemed genuinely invested in listening to me. We spoke at length that evening, drifting off to a quieter area of the event to discuss random topics from travel to music to my love of old films. He told me about his family, how he'd lost his father at a young age, and how he'd had to grow up fast to help his mother. That sense of responsibility and gentle confidence in him drew me in right away. A couple of months into our relationship, I introduced him to my parents and eventually to Victoria. My parents adored him. They kept saying how mature and respectable he was. Vika, on the other hand, seemed oddly standoffish. She'd ask him a lot of questions about his job, his ex-girlfriends, his finances, in a way that felt interrogative rather than friendly. Still, at the time, I shrugged it off as overprotectiveness. 2 years went by and Andrew proposed to me on a beautiful, starry night near a lake where we had one of our first romantic dates. His proposal was perfect, simple, heartfelt, and honest. Of course, I said yes. I remember calling Vika right after I told my parents, wanting to share the news. She answered with a faint congratulations, but something in her tone struck me as forced. I chalked it up to old sibling tensions. My wedding planning soon took center stage, and every day was a whirlwind of booking venues, hiring photographers, discussing invitations, tasting cakes, all the usual chaos that accompanies a large traditional wedding. Vika surprised me by offering to help with some of the wedding preparations. She said she had connections to a few professional videographers and DJs, and she wanted to be in charge of the technical aspects of the wedding day: sound, music, lighting. Although she and I weren't close, it touched me that she was willing to pitch in. I tried to see it as a sign that she really did want us to grow closer. And I'll be honest, planning a wedding for nearly 200 guests isn't easy, so any help was welcome. But almost immediately, Vika's involvement triggered a feeling of unease I couldn't quite shake. She began visiting our apartment, mine and Andrew's future home, under various pretexts. One day, she said she wanted to scope out the best spots for the extra speakers. Another day, she claimed she needed to measure wall sockets to figure out if they could handle certain amps. This might not have been suspicious in itself, but the way she did it, fiddling around in corners, peering under furniture, repeatedly taking pictures on her phone, made me uncomfortable. When I'd ask what she was doing, she'd toss out some explanation about wanting to ensure top-notch sound quality. It never felt entirely convincing. There was a particular moment that stands out in my memory. I came home from an errand and found Vika in our kitchen, crouched near a wall cabinet with a tiny rectangular device in her hand. Startled by my presence, she nearly dropped it. When I asked what it was, she gave a rushed answer about it being a small transformer for some decorative lighting she was planning. She talked about creating a romantic surprise for our wedding night. I was taken aback but decided to believe her. After all, I reasoned, she must be making an effort to add a personal touch. Maybe I was letting my old distrust get the better of me. The real flares of suspicion, though, came during the last few days leading up to the wedding. A friend of ours, who was helping with table arrangements at the venue, mentioned to me that she spotted Vika roaming around areas of our new apartment, even when there was no reason to. I tried to shrug it off, telling myself I was just stressed from wedding logistics, but the sense of dread clung to me. For a moment, I almost confronted Vika, but then I looked at my busy schedule and decided I had no time for drama. I convinced myself that I was just reading too much into her behavior. Finally, our wedding day arrived. It was a warm, sunny Saturday, and the ceremony was everything I dreamed of. I wore a gorgeous white gown with a flowing veil. My parents beamed with pride, and Andrew's mother was crying tears of joy. The guests were excited. The music was perfect, and the entire celebration seemed magical. As I walked down the aisle, my heart pounded with the emotional weight of that moment. My father on my arm, all my loved ones looking on, and Andrew waiting for me at the altar with a gentle smile. I remember tearing up, feeling like I was stepping into the happiest day of my life. Throughout the ceremony and the reception, Vika was in constant motion, talking to the DJ, giving instructions to the videographers, and occasionally running off to answer phone calls. She looked both excited and nervous, with an undercurrent of tension in her eyes that I couldn't interpret. At one point, Andrea and I walked into a side room near the catering kitchen to catch our breath, and we accidentally ran into Vika, whispering with one of the videographers. They both seemed startled to see us, and I heard her say, "Did you get the key?" before abruptly stopping. When she noticed us, she smiled brightly and said something about double-checking camera angles for the wedding highlight reel. A knot formed in my stomach, but with the wedding in full swing, I told myself there was no time to read too much into it. I let it go. The main reception lasted until close to midnight. After hours of dancing, mingling, toasts, and more dancing, Andrea and I were beyond exhausted. Many of the guests, including family members, planned to meet again the next day for a casual follow-up celebration, but they urged us to head home and enjoy our first official night as husband and wife. My parents and several others waved goodbye with good-natured winks and remarks about how this night was ours, alone. When we got back to our apartment, it was almost 2 in the morning. The second we opened the door, I saw rose petals scattered on the floor and small string lights looped artfully across our living area. At first, I was touched, assuming that Vika, in some elaborate gesture, had truly tried to create a romantic atmosphere for us. The soft glow of the lights, the petals, and the hush of the apartment felt magical. I changed out of my wedding gown into something comfortable, just a t-shirt and loose shorts, while Andrew went to shower. Wandering around the living room, I picked up a glass of water and scrolled through my phone, skimming messages from friends. A wave of warmth passed over me. I felt so grateful for the day's joy, for Andrew, for our families. That's when I saw it. A tiny device perched on our bedroom dresser, just in front of a framed photo of us at the beach. It was small, black, and had a round, glassy surface that looked suspiciously like a lens. At first, my brain refused to comprehend. I approached it, my pulse quickening. It really did look like a camera, but not one that Andrea and I owned. A cold wave of nausea hit me. Why was there a camera in our bedroom, specifically angled toward our bed? Fear slammed through me. This had to be some sick joke or a bizarre gift from prankster friends. But no one had the right to do that, especially not in our private space. I called Andrew over in a trembling voice. He appeared in the doorway with a towel around his waist, water still dripping from his hair. The moment I showed him the device, he went pale. He gently took it from my hand and inspected it. Seeing the letters, Wi-Fi cam, he quickly switched it off, fumbling with the battery or whatever power source it had, while I stood there, my body rigid with shock. Neither of us spoke at first. Then I started shaking. The realization that we had just uncovered a hidden camera aimed at capturing our most private moments on our wedding night, probably for God knows what purpose, was too much to process. I felt violated and humiliated all at once. Who on earth would do such a thing? We tried to reason it out. Andrew suspected at once that it had something to do with Vika's odd comings and goings. He looked both furious and worried, as if he was trying to protect me from the darkest possibility that my own sister had set this up. But the signs were overwhelming. I remembered how she had frequently shown up at the apartment, the contraption she'd been installing in the kitchen, her weird conversations with the videographers, and her stammered excuses about lighting or sound checks. I didn't sleep well that night. We checked the rest of the room and found a second small camera hidden among my books. That discovery triggered a full-blown meltdown in me. I wanted to scream and cry simultaneously, feeling like everything I believed about my sister had cracked irreparably. We removed the second camera and turned it off as well. It was clear we had to confront her, but I dreaded what might come to light. In the morning, I insisted on contacting my sister right away. She came over with a forced smile, acting as though it was a normal post-wedding visit. I wasted no time. I shoved the cameras in her face and demanded she explain herself. Her expression morphed into this panicked mix of shock and guilt. At first, she denied everything, trying to frame it as some kind of elaborate surprise or romantic wedding gift, which made absolutely no sense. Andrew pressed her, asking why the cameras were hidden and why there were two of them. Finally, she mumbled that she had concerns about Andrew's fidelity, and she wanted to protect me by gathering proof that he was either faithful or cheating. I thought I was going to pass out from rage. How twisted did she have to be to think this was acceptable? Did she really believe that sneaking cameras into our bedroom was any kind of legitimate safeguard? When we asked about how long she'd been recording, she admitted to installing the cameras days before the wedding. According to her, she already had some footage. Nothing graphic, thank God, since Andrea and I had been sleeping or out most of the time. But she confessed she'd watch us sometimes from a remote app, just to make sure everything was okay. My disgust was boundless. Andrew was furious too, but he was trying to keep calm while I was trembling with betrayal. We decided to involve our parents so they could see the full extent of her actions. My mother and father rushed over, worried out of their minds, suspecting there'd been a burglary or some tragic accident. When we told them that Vika had planted hidden cameras in our bedroom, they were speechless. My mother broke down in tears, yelling at my sister, demanding she explain how she could do such a thing. My father stood there in stony silence, probably too ashamed or shocked to speak. Vika's excuses started piling up. She repeated that she did it to save me from a bad marriage, that she only kept some recordings to watch out for red flags. All of it was infuriating nonsense. Even if she had truly suspected Andrew of cheating, this was an unthinkable invasion of privacy. Nobody had the right to watch us in our own bedroom. In that moment, I realized I didn't even recognize the person my sister had become. She wasn't simply competitive anymore. She had crossed a line into invasive cruelty. Our relatives got wind of the conflict soon enough. Some urged us to contact the police, reminding us that this was not just a family spat, but a serious violation of the law. Others, mostly older relatives who wanted to avoid public scandal, begged us to handle it privately. As for me, I felt like my entire sense of security and trust had been obliterated. Andrew, for his part, insisted we had to consider going to the authorities, not only because it was the logical step, but to ensure there were no more copies of these videos floating around. Vika kept pleading that she'd destroyed or deleted everything, that no one else had seen the footage, but her story kept shifting. First, she claimed she set it up on the wedding night only. Then she admitted she'd had them running for a few days. Then she said maybe a week. Her accounts of where the files were stored, whether in the cloud or on her personal laptop, changed every time we pressed for details. At one point, I was so emotionally overwhelmed that I just wanted her out of my sight. Seeing my parents' torment didn't help either. They looked devastated, apologizing to me for not noticing the signs that Vika was capable of such an act. I told Vika to leave and not to come back until I had time to process everything. She cried, saying she never intended to hurt me, and that she truly believed Andrew was hiding something. I wanted to believe that there was some rational explanation behind her actions, but in the end, it just felt like jealousy or resentment. Perhaps she'd nurtured some twisted fascination with our relationship. Perhaps she wanted to ruin it out of envy or confirm some paranoid suspicion. Whatever it was, she had destroyed my trust in her. The next few days were pure emotional chaos for me and Andrew. Instead of enjoying our new marriage, we combed through the apartment, searching for any other hidden devices, checking the outlets, the furniture, anything that could contain a spy camera or microphone. Every time we found something innocuous, a weird-looking screw or an unfamiliar cable, I'd experience a jolt of panic. Andrew was the voice of reason, telling me we'd be okay, that we'd figure this out. He even hired a technician to do a sweep of our place, who thankfully found no more hidden equipment. I was left with the persistent fear that Vika still had the recordings, that maybe she'd shared them with someone, or that they'd end up on the internet. I felt sick to my stomach whenever the thought crossed my mind. I had nightmares about people at work, or old classmates stumbling upon videos of me walking around in my pajamas, or worse, seeing private marital moments. The vulnerability of it all eroded my sense of safety. My parents were torn between trying to comfort me and scolding Vika for her recklessness, but even they didn't know what to do next. About a week later, when I was finally beginning to calm down, the phone rang in the middle of the night. It was around 4 a.m, and the screen showed Vika's name. My heart lurched. She was crying incoherently when I picked up. Through sobs, She told me that her laptop had been stolen from her car after someone smashed the window. She feared that the videos, if they were still on the device, could be in the hands of criminals or hackers. That revelation sent me into a fresh wave of panic. I barely managed to speak, my voice hoarse from anger and fear. She confessed that she'd lied about deleting the files completely, claiming she'd kept them just in case she ever needed to prove her bizarre suspicions. Now, the laptop was gone. She begged me to forgive her and to help her figure out how to handle this. I was so furious and terrified that I couldn't stand hearing her voice. I told her I never wanted to see her again. Then I hung up and burst into sobs. Andrew had been asleep, but he woke up to comfort me, instantly alarmed by my breakdown. The next morning, the two of us spoke to a lawyer. Although I felt torn about going to the police, the lawyer explained that if these files were compromised, we needed an official record that we were victims in case someone tried to blackmail or publicly release them. So we filed a police report about the stolen laptop and the potential existence of private footage, also making sure to note that we had never consented to any filming. It was humiliating to even recount the story to a stranger, but we had no choice. The fear of personal videos leaking was too great a risk. Weeks passed, and there was no sign of the videos appearing online or on sketchy websites. We didn't get any blackmail threats. Maybe the laptop was wiped or sold for parts, or maybe the thieves simply weren't interested in the content. Whatever the case, it was a small mercy in this ordeal, and I tried to channel that relief into rebuilding my mental stability. Still, the damage was done. My idyllic vision of a perfect start to married life had been shattered. Andrew was loving and supportive, but I felt guilty that our honeymoon period was overshadowed by constant anxiety. Whenever he tried to lighten the mood, cooking a special dinner or suggesting a romantic weekend away, I found myself plagued by intrusive thoughts, worries about privacy, and a lingering sense of betrayal. As for my parents, they were stuck in a painful place, not wanting the family to fall apart, but also horrified by what Vika had done. My mother's eyes brimmed with tears whenever she asked me if there was any way I could eventually forgive my sister. My father, usually the stoic figure in our family, quietly told me he didn't blame me for cutting Vika off. He understood that trust once broken might never be restored. I've barely spoken to Vika since. She reached out a few times, leaving voicemails in which she apologized, insisted she was in therapy, and pleaded for a chance to make things right. But the memory of those cameras in my bedroom, the shock and dread and disgust they caused, is still too raw. Every time I think of her rummaging around my apartment, setting up those devices, and watching me, it sends a chill down my spine. I don't know if that feeling will ever fully go away. Occasionally, in the middle of the night, I wake up with a jolt, half convinced there's another camera pointed at me, that I'm once again being spied on. Andrew reassures me, telling me we've installed enough security measures, that it's impossible for her or anyone else to sneak something in again. Rationally, I believe him, but the emotional scar remains. It's one thing to read about hidden surveillance in the news. It's another to experience it in your most intimate space, by someone who was supposed to love you unconditionally. This entire experience has forced me to reflect on how easily we can overlook someone's potential for destructive behavior, simply because we share a blood connection. I keep running through my childhood memories, questioning if I missed any signs that Vika might do something so extreme. Did she show any hints of this controlling streak when we were teens? Or any manipulative tendencies beyond our normal sisterly rivalries? Maybe it was always there, simmering beneath the surface, and I never acknowledged it. Or maybe she had deeper issues that I was too self-absorbed to notice, especially once we were both adults with separate lives. And in the background of all this, I'm haunted by guilt that maybe I let the old rivalry fester instead of seeking real reconciliation. If I had spoken more openly with her about our differences, would she have ever gotten to this point? That question doesn't justify her actions, of course. I'm still appalled by what she did, but I can't stop my mind from wandering over that painful what if. I don't know if Vika and I will ever speak properly again. My parents still hope for a day when we can sit down as a family and find a way forward, maybe with enough therapy, on her part, and honestly, on mine too. We could at least reach a point where I don't feel physically ill at the thought of being in the same room as her. Right now, though, my protective instincts are on high alert. When someone goes so far as to record your private moments, there's no telling what else they might be capable of. The sense of betrayal is profound and all-consuming, and it casts a shadow over my happiest memories of the wedding day itself. As for Andrea and me, we have chosen to focus on our life together, to reclaim our home as a space of safety and love. We've repainted the bedroom and rearranged the furniture, trying to shed the association with those hidden cameras. We want new memories that overshadow the painful ones. If anything positive came out of this catastrophe, it's that Andrew has shown me he's unwaveringly supportive. He dealt with the whole ordeal so patiently and kindly, never blaming me for my sister's actions, never making me feel like I should just get over it. If I had any doubts about his character before, and I didn't, this proved to me that he's exactly the man I want by my side, no matter what obstacles life throws at us. In quiet moments, I reflect on how naive I was to think that our wedding day would be purely storybook perfect. Life doesn't always adhere to fairy tale scripts. Sometimes, reality barges in with a harsh reminder that trust can be broken, even by those closest to us. It's a painful lesson, but at least it makes me value sincerity and respect even more, especially in the person I married. We faced something deeply disturbing right at the beginning of our marriage, and we survived it together. That fact alone is a testament to our bond. Writing this all down feels cathartic in a way, even if it still hurts. I hope that anyone reading this, anyone who has that strange gut feeling that someone close might be crossing boundaries, will trust their instincts. Don't dismiss suspicious behavior just because it comes from family. That was my mistake. I wanted so badly to believe in the best of Vika that I ignored all the signs. It's an awful realization to have, especially in retrospect. But I also know that love, especially familial love, can blind us to warnings we'd notice in anyone else. If Vika truly regrets her actions, I hope she's getting the help she needs. I'm certain she has her own perspectives and reasons, twisted as they might be, for why she intruded on our privacy in this way. But as far as my own healing goes, I need distance, time, and the ability to feel secure in my home again. Perhaps in the future, if enough changes happen, if trust can be rebuilt in some capacity, we might find a way to talk. But I'm not rushing that day. I can't imagine letting my guard down around her after everything that's happened. For now, I'm focusing on my marriage, my career, and trying to forge a future that isn't overshadowed by this betrayal. Some nights, Andrea and I will sit at the dining table and just talk, reminding each other that we're in control of our own story. We're actively choosing to move forward and not let what happened define our entire relationship. We're determined that the memory of our wedding won't always be overshadowed by my sister's twisted act. Instead, we want to keep alive the genuine joy we felt that day when we pledged our lives to each other. I wish our wedding story could have ended the day we left the reception, with rose petals and fairy lights paving the way to a blissful future. But real life doesn't tie itself up in neat bows, and sometimes the darkest revelations emerge just when you're convinced you've reached your happiest moment. All I can do now is keep moving forward, love my husband with all my heart, and hold on to the hope that in time, the shadow of what happened will recede. It may never be completely gone, but if anything, it's taught me the importance of boundaries, intuition, and the sobering truth that betrayal can come from the very last place you'd expect.